Welcome to From the Shed M podcast. Myself, TDOT, Theo, as always. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Happy it's Friday. Nervously excited, obviously, for the game tomorrow. Big game, big game. Looking forward to it. Looking in front here, seeing all the grey skies, and it's not quite Abu Dhabi, but can't complain.
Yeah. It's let's talk about Al Hilal, because I did a preview. I did a match preview and a match review, but we obviously didn't get to hear your thoughts. So, what did you think about the game initially? Obviously, it was KG. I got the prediction right for a change.
You did.
1-0. But what was your thoughts on the game? Sort of a game of two halves, really.
I mean, it's just kind of a carbon copy of every single game we've almost played this season, except that we managed to snatch the win and, we're through to the next round. The first half was filled of chances for Chelsea. Lots of chances for Lukaku, Havertz, and all the players that were involved. We didn't take many of his chances except for the Lukaku goal, which he couldn't really miss. And then second half, slowly inviting Al Hilal back into the game. They had their chances, they had their opportunities. And on any other day, maybe with a stronger opposition, they're scoring those chances. Like we saw with Burnley, with Man United, with Everton, we invite these teams back into the game and then they manage to snatch a draw. So we're lucky in a way that we didn't let them back into the game. We're through, clean sheet. We have to look at the positives. If we eventually do win the Club World Cup, we're not going to remember the results. We're just going to remember the fact that we've lifted the trophy. So I'm pleased that we've qualified. It's a big final now because we know what happened in 2012. We came so close yet so far. Yeah. And there's players, I think Aspi is the only one that remains from that team. Petr Cech, now obviously our sporting director, he'll want to see this team lift the trophy because he was in that squad as well. So it's a really big opportunity and game for us tomorrow.
Yeah, and I have to agree. I was just about to mention Kepa. Strip Bears just mentioned there around Kepa. Hakim Ziyech for me as well. And I know Kai Havertz kind of got a mixed reaction online on Twitter and various other social medias. But for me, those are the three standouts. I think Kepa pulled off some brilliant saves in that second half just to make sure that it did stay 1-0. We talk about the Lukaku goal, but he did miss. He had a stinker still, in my opinion, to an extent. I think he missed a sitter. There's a perfect chance where I think Mason Mount in the second half whipped in a beautiful ball. But I'm going to ask you this question before we get on to the final. Well, it is part of the final, I suppose. But just in terms of goalkeeper, obviously we know that Edouard Mendy's linked back up with the squad now. It feels like a stupid question, but I've got to ask it. Kepa or Mendy? And I think you did a poll on our Instagram and our Twitter, but I'm going to ask you directly, Kepa or Mendy for tomorrow's final?
I mean, before I dive into the goalkeeper dilemma or situation, big shout out to Kovacic as well. He was fantastic. Lots of energy, gave that stamina throughout the 90 minutes and worthy man of the match, probably alongside Kepa, who is my choice for the goalkeeper for tomorrow's final. You've played in a semi-final. You've participated in getting the team to the final. You deserve to be the goalkeeper that plays in the final. He played every single game of the FA Cup last season and played in the final at Wembley. He played every single game of our League Cup, campaign so far this season, and will probably play in the final at Wembley against Liverpool on the 27th of February. I think it's only fair that Kepa starts. And I'm not saying that because, he's our cup competition keeper now, but also he's a fantastic keeper. Whether it's Mendy or Kepa, I'm not worried. I back both of them to do a fantastic job, and that's just how good Kepa's got this season. Last season, maybe, or 2 seasons ago, shots from distance was his kryptonite. He felt it was kind of his weak spot. And that save he pulled off with his left arm against Al Hilal was something he'd be letting in, 1 or 2 years ago. It was a fantastic save. And he really seems, confident now. And I think he's my choice to start on Saturday tomorrow, and maybe bring Mendy back in for Crystal Palace the following weekend.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I put together my predicted lineup, and I want to share it with you, just see what your thoughts were. If I'm honest, I haven't technically changed much. And when I was doing it, I don't know. I felt like I struggled to an extent. Let me start from the beginning so we can see the entirety of the team. But obviously, I went with Kepa in goal.
Using FIFA cards, I like it.
Yeah, I'm trying. We're working on it, Theo. We're going to get it better. We're going to make sure that we don't have to use FIFA cards. I hate using them, to be fair. But so yeah, we've gone for Kepa in goal. who I think, like, I agree 100% with you. I think he deserves, not even the fact that he deserves it. He's just performed well over the last couple of weeks. We spoke about it on the podcast and also on our YouTube videos about how much of the progression and the maturity that we've seen with Kepa. And also as well, we know that this final could go through to penalties. And we know in terms of penalties, who would you rather trust in getting you through that? Kepa or Mendy? We've got to be realistic and say Kepa. So, in my opinion, Kepa has to start. He does deserve to start. And I agree with you. Let Mendy just enjoy the victory of the African Cup of Nations, enjoy being out with the squad and come back. And, we've still got important games to play in the Premier League as well. So that was my reasoning for Kepa. Obviously, the back five, I disagree with me if you have to, but I don't see the need to change the back five or, the three centre backs and Alonso. I was impressed with Malang Sarr against Al Hilal, but I just think this is a totally different team we're playing. What's your thoughts on that back five? Would you change it to a back four?
My one worry is players like Alonso and Aspi. We know that they're fantastic players, but they don't have the legs anymore. They don't track back as much as they should, and they played a big portion of that game against Plymouth last weekend. And probably, I think they both played, or at least Aspi did, the 90 minutes against Al Hilal. They may be tired, and if we were to play a back four, which works so well against Spurs, before in a few of the games against Spurs, actually in the League Cup and in the Premier League, before the winter break, it may kind of confuse Palmeiras because they're probably expecting Chelsea to field a back three with the wing backs, and it would also free up a spot, for another attacking player, the likes of Hudson-Odoi, Pulisic, and Mason Mount. And also, we've seen how well Ziyech plays when we play with a back four. It gives him more freedom up front and up top. So I'm a bit on the fence on this one, whether we play a back four or a back three. If we had maybe a Reece James or a Ben Chilwell, 100% maybe the back three of the wing backs, but Alonso and Aspi, as good as they are, then they're not Chilwell, they're not Reece James. So I'd have to go with a back four today and maybe put Sarr as left back.
Yeah, it's an option. I think it's the reason I went with Aspi. I think this is a game that I think even if he had a broken leg, I think he'd probably want to try and play in it. I think, it's the one trophy, and we've got to look at it from this perspective as well. If he does leave in the summer, which is still, a high possibility, I feel like he's going to want to play in this game. It's a massive, I think looking at the squad that I went with the experienced team. And I think looking at Malang Sarr, who is we spoke about him again on the podcast. And when he first came, we had a few doubts around his ability. His height was questioned as well. But just looking at that back, the back three plus the two wing backs, I think that extra cover, I feel like when we play a back five, obviously you get the additional centre back in there, the experience of Thiago Silva, Christensen, who I was impressed with, and also Rudiger, who just doesn't get, he's not scared to get stuck in. And I think in those kind of games, you're going to need those back three. But I do think, the back four, Malang Sarr being in that, I don't disagree with it. It just worries me, I think, a little bit.
No, the experience part does make sense now that you've brought it up. You're looking at that, there's three centre backs in that predicted lineup, and the wing backs, 4 of those 5 players played the part in the Champions League final. They've played, big games for Chelsea. And like you just said, you need Aspi in that team. He's the first player you're going to put in this team simply because he was part of that team that went to Japan and lost to Corinthians in 2012. And he'll probably give blood, sweat and tears tomorrow amongst everyone. So he has to start with his right wing back or right back. But I think either way, we've got Tuchel hopefully tomorrow as well. So if it's a back three or a back four, you'd back us to try to keep a clean sheet and have the wingers or the fullbacks contribute to attacking players as well.
Yep, 100%. I want to talk to you about the midfield because I know, again, and I did sort of mention it as well. Obviously, we started the game with Kovacic, who we said was superb. Jorginho, who I thought had a really good game, but we did notice a massive difference when N'Golo Kante came on against Al Hilal, and the difference in the drop in possession that we had in the second half. So I went with Kante in this game and kept Kovacic in the role that he played, but is it the right call? Do you think? Do you think Tuchel would want to go for a Kante, or would you stick to having Jorginho, who seems like he was able to play the role that was asked of him a lot better than Kante in the game against Al Hilal?
Yeah, like you said, big drop off in that second half when Kante came in for Jorginho. Jorginho keeps the ball so well and he sets the tempo for the game. As good as Kante is, and he's probably our best midfielder in terms of ability and technique. I think Kovacic, Jorginho has been our most successful midfield partnership in terms of getting the wins and the results. That being said, Jorginho has played a lot of football recently. Just how I'm going to talk about Ziyech in a minute. So I'm happy to see Kante and Kovacic, and they've got the experience, they've got the ability. Whether it's Jorginho, Kovacic, Kante, Jorginho, you'd back any of the two of them to do a fantastic job. So I'm happy with Kante Kova. The one thing is, if he does get the penalties, maybe you'd think Jorginho would step in at that stage because we know what he's capable of doing from the penalty spot. So yeah, I'm happy seeing Kante Kovacic there.
What would you say? I'm just looking at the comment from Praveen Kumar around three midfield players in Kovacic, Kante, and Jorginho starting tomorrow. How would that work? Would that be a 4-3-3? And then you look at that goes kind of what you were saying before around having the 4 defenders, 3 midfield, and then you got your 3 attackers. Is that something potentially we might see? Do you think?
It's a possibility. I do think if we play a back 4, we want to prioritize a player that can get goals. Well, that's probably a Pulisic or a Hudson-Odoi, but I do think Kante, Kovacic, and maybe you'd play Kovacic or Kante in that kind of further up the pitch could be a possibility. But I think it could only be an option if we play a back 4.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Hakim Ziyech, who arguably has been, the last couple of weeks, he's definitely been the player for me that has stood out, put out, 8 out of 9, 8 out of 10s, 9 out of 10 performances. When I did this initially, I wanted to try and fit Kai Havertz into this team because I think looking at the Al Hilal game, I think Kai Havertz and Lukaku worked really well together. But I also thought Mason Mount, when he came on, as much as he was a bit of a bull in the china shop to a certain extent, but we know what he brings to a team. He unlocks defense. He's very creative. Is Hakim Ziyech someone who potentially sits out the final? Is that harsh because of how he's playing at the moment? Is it something that we can't overlook, the fact that he's playing that well, that he has to start in tomorrow's final?
I mean, we have to consider we're blessed to have such a fantastic squad in depth and the quality of players up front, even though they've been relatively inconsistent this season with their performances. And like you just said, probably Hakim Ziyech has been our player of 2022 so far. That being said, we're now one of those players that played 120 minutes against Plymouth. He played a large chunk of the game against Al Hilal. And I remember at the end of the Plymouth game, I stayed, applauded the players, and he just collapsed to the ground and looked shattered, absolutely shattered. And against Al Hilal again, he brought so much energy, and his body language looks different. So it seems like he's giving it a bit more than he was before, because he was a bit lazy, a bit lackluster before, a bit lethargic. So I feel like he's probably one of the players in the squad I'm currently looking at, probably the most tired, who's played the most football in the last couple of weeks. But that being said, he's also been our best player, so it's it's a dilemma. I think he should be starting, or at least play 60 minutes of football. Or if he doesn't start, bring him off the bench. Hopefully, he can have an impact off the bench, because I do want to try to fit in Kai Havertz into this team as well. Yeah,
and this goes back to what I said on the previous video in terms of Kai Havertz and Lukaku. As much as it wasn't Lukaku's best game, he. There were signs that there was something in him, whether it was 100 million or £100, I wasn't sure, but there was something in him that showed that he can sort of fit into this system. And Kai Havertz, I felt, brought out the best in him in terms of that. But what was your thoughts on Lukaku and against Al Hilal, and also would you start him in the final?
Firstly, his link-up play with Havertz was great that day. Probably the most impressive since those earlier games in the season, the likes of our draw against Anfield, our win against Arsenal. Lukaku grew with confidence during the game. Yes, he missed a lot of sitters. He should be doing better. He should be creating that service for himself. But you could also see him, making more of an effort, and that goal probably did him a lot of good. Yes, he didn't celebrate. He probably felt like he didn't earn the right to celebrate given his poor performances since the famous interview. But he grew with confidence. He was trying. I felt like his energy levels were slightly better. But again, it's just not what you'd expect from a £100 million man. If you're basing a team on form and merit, maybe he should be in there simply because he got that goal against Al Hilal that got us through to the final. But he should have been starting any of those games against Plymouth, don't know who we played before that. Was it Brighton or Tottenham before the break? But I think when you pay £100 million for a player, which in one of our biggest games of the season, he should be starting as well.
And also, again, we just mentioned around Kai Havertz. I've put Mason Mount in there, bull in a china shop. Does he make the final? Is the question, because he sat out a massive chunk of the semi-final against Al Hilal. What does it mean for Mason Mount? For me, he's got to go in there, but at a sacrifice of Kai Havertz, which is a massive headache for Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this one, because I want to fit in Havertz, I want to fit in Mount, I want to fit in Ziyech, which is why maybe a back four makes more sense in a situation. If I'm completely honest, I didn't feel like he was good when he came on against Al Hilal. He just felt like he was just there to tease the Al Hilal players and try to pick up fights with them. Whether Mount starts, whether it's Havertz, I'm happy. But if I'm picking a player based on the performance I saw against Al Hilal on Wednesday afternoon, it has to be Havertz over Mount.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. I think we're looking at a player for me that can unlock defenders, unlock defenses, makes it difficult for defenders as well. So it's a tricky one for me, because I think Mount needs to be in there, but again, at the cost of Kai Havertz, it's a difficult one for me. But you just mentioned around, or we spoke earlier about Thomas Tuchel, and I know you tweeted about it earlier, but apparently Thomas Tuchel is flying out to Abu Dhabi as part of the setup for the team. So that's going to make a massive difference, I think, in terms of just having him there as well, the presence of having, the manager there. Surely it's a good thing as well. And obviously Roman Abramovich is due to be out there as well.
Yeah, it's going to be great to have Tuchel on the side, on the touchline. It's not official yet. I think there's a couple reliable sources on Twitter that have reported that he's flown out just now. We know that he was regularly in contact with Lowe and I think he's called Arno, the other assistant coach, and obviously Czech when he was isolating back in London. I think there was a couple complaints about the Wi-Fi connection in Bin Zayed Mohammed Stadium. But no, you want your manager on a touchline for a big final, and having Roman there, it's always good. He was there in 2012. He was there in 2021 in Porto. So having kind of everyone, in the stadium kind of represents how significant the match is for us as well. You don't want your assistant coach leading the team for a big final like this, and halftime team talks as well, whether it's the Wi-Fi connection or seeing your manager over Zoom. You want to have him in person. You want that body language. You want that presence. You want that inspirational team talk that has your manager, getting the players motivated. So I'm pleased that he'll be traveling.
I know we mentioned obviously before, which we haven't really mentioned, our opposition. With South Americans.
Don't know too much about them, if I'm honest.
Yeah, no, well, I don't, to be fair, but I know from looking at the comments earlier on sort of internets and Twitters and whatnot, it's a massive thing for South American teams. And I don't know if you sort of read earlier or you got to see earlier that a lot of the other rival teams have changed their logo and their badges to Chelsea, and there's Chelsea shirts hanging up all around South America.
I saw that, yeah.
I know one thing they did mention in the press conference earlier was that there's a lot of the fan ratio that we've got over there is completely shot to bits by our opponents. So do you think that's going to be an impact in terms of, obviously, I think it was mentioned in the press conference earlier, it's going to feel like an away match for us tomorrow's final. Do you think that's going to have any impact on the team, or do you think that in my opinion, in a final, anyone can win. Who wants it more on the day is what it comes down to. But do you think that will have an impact?
It definitely will. Like you said, I don't think Liverpool, City, and United are changing their crest to the Palmeiras colours, are they? It just goes to show that football in the Club World Cup in South America is taken probably a lot more serious than European clubs take it, and the actual significance of the tournament is a lot bigger. I've been fortunate. I've seen some football in South America. I've been to Colombia. I've seen what it's like in the stadium. It's not just a sport out there, it's a religion. They take it really, really seriously. They love their football out in South America. Atmosphere is crazy. When I was there at that game in Medellin in Colombia, it was huge, and I expect kind of the Brazilian fans to be as lively and dynamic. So it will feel like quite a hostile atmosphere, and like you said, it could potentially feel like an away game for us Chelsea fans and Chelsea players.
Yeah, and let's wrap up soon. Let's talk about predictions. I kind of hate doing them. I said that last time, but what are you going for? Surely this is a win, the elusive trophy that I keep mentioning. I feel like the players have got to do this for Azpilicueta. If he does leave, in the summer, this would tick off what would be, a brilliant career as a Chelsea legend. Let's call him what it is. Surely we've got enough there. You look at the bench that we've got as well. You look at some of the players that we haven't even mentioned in terms of who potentially might start, who can come off that bench. But what do you think?
We have to win. We've said it. As soon as we won the Champions League, we said now we need to win the Club World Cup. That's the one trophy that we're missing out on, especially after we won the Super Cup. Super Cup, we won it fourth time of asking. Thomas Tuchel was the manager who won it for us. Hopefully now we can win the Club World Cup. And I feel like if we can't beat Palmeiras, as probably as good as their fans are going to be on the day, as good as maybe they probably want it more than some of the Chelsea players, given, how, like I just mentioned, how big the Club World Cup is in Brazil and Latin America. I still think we've got that depth. We haven't.
It's a fair point.
Yeah, I'd rather not. I don't want the Audi Cup, if I'm honest. I think it's that's the only, let that stay in the Tottenham trophy cabinet. But no, I think we need to win. And like I said, if we can't beat Al Hilal, we can't beat Palmeiras, it reflects badly on us. We don't be coming back to Europe, with no trophy. And for Azpilicueta, we have to win. So let's go with 2-1 Chelsea.
2-1. I think Strip Bear said the same, 2-1
nice.
As well. There is also a big game that we don't really or haven't covered on here properly, which is there's a Arsenal women's, Chelsea women's game today as well, which I'll be watching. But it's a big game. It's a big game. It's just as big as under 23s in the men's football, but it's a massive game. So yeah.
What about your prediction for the Club World Cup final? Trying to avoid it there.
You see what I've done there. Yeah, I'm going to say 1-0 again. I think it's going to be really cagey. I think the fact that it is going to feel like an away game for us, it's it's one of those games that we have to. Ideally, I'd love it to be 2-0, and I think if we can get a 2-goal lead, maybe sit back a little bit. But if we do what we've done against Al Hilal and we try and sit back every time they get the ball,
not take our chances as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mentioned, there was a couple, I think, from Lukaku. We've got to do better. We've got to do better with shooting and finishing these opportunities that we're making. We saw it against Plymouth, like we mentioned, 41 shots, and how many were on target? I think it was about 11 on target.
Yeah.
So we've got to make opportunities. We've got to create chances, but we've got to capitalize and score goals. We can't sit back on a 1-0 because in cup competitions, and I'm sure I've said this before, it's only going to take one moment for one of us to make a mistake, or for them just to get a lucky goal or a penalty or something, and then it's 1-1, and then we go into extra time. Then we're relying on Kepa, we're relying on penalties to get to win. So I'm going to say 1-0. But I do think it's going to be a very, very cagey game, hostile. Like you said, there was moments, especially with Mason Mount, Rudiger, where it kind of got a bit physical and, getting in each other's faces. And I do think this is going to be exactly, if not worse, it's going to be one of those kind of games. So it's, it's difficult. It's difficult. I'm going to go 1-0. I think Thomas Tuchel being there will have a massive impact. That was mentioned. Jorginho was part of the press conference today, and he mentioned, it has kind of been a massive loss not having him in the dressing room and being around the team, being around the camp. So I think if he is there, which it's kind of almost been confirmed that he's going to be out there for tomorrow's final, then I think he'll be a massive part. Just being on the touchline, just being there, just being visible. But I'm confident. I'm confident. This is if we win this, we can actually say that we've won it all, and I think that's
champions of the world.
Champions of the world. We can honestly say that and we've got to credit. I mean, I said this before. We've got to credit Tuchel for this as well. You know, to reach that many finals that's available to him in club competition, and to get that in that short space of time that he's been at Chelsea is an achievement in itself.
Definitely, Tuchel's the man for these big opportunities and big finals. You got to back him, and like I said before, having him on the touchline in the dressing room will have an impact on the players' tactics, motivation. So let's bring that trophy home now.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll be back next week, I'm sure. We'll have an episode. It's going to be doom and gloom or happy Monday. It depends which way it goes, isn't it? But I'm confident. It's 4:30. I think it's 4:30. Is it 4:30?
I think it is again. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully we get Jimmy Floyd. I don't know if you got to see it on E4, but Jimmy Floyd was on there. So
love Jimmy Floyd.
And I think it was Pat Nevin as well commentating. So yeah, you know, let's hope we can get some good success at the weekend, and also let's hope that, you know, other teams drop some points. You know, we saw a few teams drop points in the Premier League.
Yesterday's results could have gone our way a bit better, but Spurs dropping points, United dropping points, we'll take that.
Liverpool looks scary. I know I said that to you earlier, but they do. I'm not too worried about Liverpool. I think they're, you know, not our worry, to be fair. That's more City's worry. But yeah, in terms of the other teams behind us, yeah, we've just got to focus on tomorrow and then get back to Palace next weekend. But thank you everyone who tuned in. We appreciate it. For everyone who made their comments known, and Strip Bear, definitely, you know, avid follower of the channel, so appreciate that as well. But we'll be back next week, like I said, hopefully with another trophy to add to the accolades as Chelsea fans. So thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week.